The millionaire's autistic son screamed in public, but the waitress's secret saved them all. The afternoon sun spilled through tall windows, flooding the upscale cafe with sharp light that caught on the polished silver and gleaming glass. Soft jazz floated through the air, smooth and inviting, while the chatter of well-dressed patrons created a warm buzz. This was the kind of place where Charles Whitmore felt he belonged, the carefully curated walls, the clink of fine china, the subtle glow of crystal chandeliers. Every detail whispered wealth, power, and control. Charles sat stiffly at a corner table, his expensive suit perfectly pressed, his tie neatly knotted. Beside him, Ethan, his 10-year-old son, fiddled nervously with the pristine white napkin. Ethan's pale blue eyes flicked from one shiny plate to another, sensing too much noise, too many people. For years, Charles had guarded Ethan's world carefully, shielding him from chaos, from judgment. Today, though, something was different. Today, everything clipped at the edge of breaking. Suddenly, a sharp, piercing scream sliced the calm. It was raw, guttural, a pure, overwhelming burst of pain and confusion from Ethan's lips. The entire cafe froze. Conversations halted mid-word. Heads snapped toward their table like metal springs. Forks hovered inches from mouths. Eyes narrowed, some filled with shock, others with barely concealed disgust. Charles felt his chest tighten so hard it was like drowning under a steel weight. Hot shame flooded his face. All those years building his polished image, his social street cred, teetered on the edge of shattering in front of these strangers. His hands trembled but reached instinctively for Ethan's shaking frame. Murmurs swelled immediately. "Is he sick?" someone whispered harshly. "How unseemly for a place like this," another muttered. Somewhere close, a woman's lip curled with disdain. The heavy silence that followed the scream began to crack with sharp whispers that stung like ice. But then, Lily stepped forward. She was a quiet presence, weaving through the crowd with a calm certainty that sliced through the tension. Lily worked here, a waitress with soft hands and eyes that held stories only you could feel, not see at first glance. Her voice lowered in a gentle, soothing rhythm. She knelt by Ethan, sliding a calming hand over his. Trembling fingers, her smile a shield against the cold stares. Charles watched, heart pounding. There was something in Lily's eyes, a flicker of knowing that hit far deeper than the surface chaos. She spoke to Ethan with tenderness born of patience and pain. Slowly, Ethan's sobs softened. The clench in Charles's chest loosened into wary hope. But hope almost shattered instantly. A sharply angry voice cut through the fragile calm. "Someone needs to control that boy. This is a public place, not a circus." A burly man in a designer suit stabbed a finger at Charles. As the crowd's whispers grew darker, their judgment swelling like a storm, Charles's stomach knotted. The threat wasn't just about the scene. It was about everything. His reputation, his control, his family's secret, fragile life balanced on a blade's edge. Then, beneath the surface of the tense moment, Charles's gaze locked with Lily's. Recognition flared. A memory clawed its way up. The painful chapter they both thought buried deep under success and silence. How could this chance meeting be just a coincidence? As the cafe's hush turned into murmurs of gossip, as stares sharpened into daggers, Charles realized this was more than a public meltdown. This was a reckoning, and only Lily held the key to whether his carefully guarded life would crumble or somehow survive. He swallowed hard, eyes darting between the angry man, Ethan's fragile face, and Lily's steady calm. What secret did she carry? And would it save them, or destroy them all? Hey, before we continue with this incredible story, I need to give you an important warning. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube removed their subscriptions without notice. Just take a quick look at the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I don't want you to miss any exclusive content coming up. And since you're here, smash that like button, because it really helps me with the algorithm. Oh, And tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who is part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's interact. Charles felt the world shift around him, time freezing in that moment. Lily's calm voice wrapped around Ethan, giving him a sanctuary in the storm. But the burly man's accusatory finger and the icy stares felt like chains tightening around his heart. Charles's mind raced. How do you protect your child from judgment, from a world that refuses to understand? But then something unexpected happened. Ethan, still trembling, met Lily's gaze. It was as if they shared a secret, a silent understanding. Charles leaned closer, desperate to grasp whatever fracture of hope flickered between them. Just then, a flicker of recognition sparked in Lily's eyes, her expression shifting from gentle concern to something deeper, something darker. "Ethan," she said softly, "remember that time at the park?" Her voice was calm, but there was an urgency in her words. Charles felt his stomach drop. The park? What was she talking about? He had taken Ethan to the park countless times, but there was a glimmer in her eyes, a memory that sent chills down his spine. Ethan nodded slowly. "The swings?" he whispered. "Yes, the swings." Her voice dropped to a near whisper, but it cut through the noise of the cafe like a knife. "And the man who helped you when you fell." The air changed as a heavy realization dawned on Charles. He remembered that day vividly. Ethan had fallen off the swing, scrapes on his knees, tears streaming down his face, and there had been a man, a stranger, who had bent down, offered his hand, whispered calming words. Lily's expression shifted, her gaze locking onto Charles with an intensity that made his heart race. "That man," she continued, her voice steady but filled with a weighty urgency, "was my brother." The cafe buzz turned into a deafening silence. The whispers multiplied, confusion and curiosity mixing with judgment. Charles's head spun. He had known Lily was special, but this was larger than them. Lily's brother? What had he done? How did this intertwine with Ethan? Suddenly, a deep tension tangled their lives together in ways he couldn't yet fathom. "Charles, it's time you understood," Lily said, her eyes searching his. "I didn't come here just to serve coffee. I've watched you, watched both of you. There's a reason." But before she could finish, the man in the designer suit shouted again, his face turning crimson. "I told you to control that child. You think this is a joke?" He slammed his hand on the table, rattling cups and sending a spoon clattering to the floor. "Hush," Lily shot back, her patience clearly wearing thin. "You have no idea what you're talking about." The tension crackled in the air. Charles took a step back, heart racing, anger and fear weaving together. How could this be happening? Everything he feared was spilling out into the light. "What do you mean a reason?" he demanded, his voice low but sharp. Lily took a deep breath, visibly steadying herself. "Because what I know about my brother, about the day at the park, it means you and Ethan are in deeper trouble than you realize. And if you want to stay safe, you need to listen to me." Every gaze in the cafe turned to them, the conversation gone. Charles felt his heartbeat echo in his ears. Here, in this sudden storm, they had crossed an invisible line. A secret that felt like a tidal wave was about to crash over them. Would this revelation save them, or lead them all to ruin? But in that moment of swirling uncertainty, one question hung heavy in the air. What had Lily's brother done that linked their fates? And could it tear their fragile world apart? Every gaze in the cafe turned, the tension palpable. Charles felt the heat of a million eyes, the weight of unspoken judgment pressing down on him. Ethan trembled beside him, confused and scared. Lily's steady voice cut through the murmur like a knife, but the storm around them wouldn't relent. "Charles, you need to listen." Lily's voice trembled slightly, urgency lacing her words. And then a loud crash shattered the moment. A glass shattered to the floor, sending shards flying as someone, Not just anyone, but the burly man lost control. He shoved his chair back, knocking it over with a resounding thud. People gasped, some jumped, looking around with wide eyes. "Enough of this!" he roared, and the cafe fell into another layer of silence. The tension contorted into something darker. "Really?" Lily stepped forward, her previous calm evaporating. "You're the one causing a scene. You don't know anything about him. You don't know anything about." "About what?" The man smirked, eyes glinting with a twisted thrill. "Maybe I know more than you think." Suddenly he pulled out his phone, raising it high, a devious grin spreading across his face. "What's the story here, huh? The millionaire and his, what, autistic son? Careful, that's a headline you don't want out there." Charles felt his stomach drop. The walls of the cafe closed in, feeling suddenly suffocating. He reached for Ethan, whose eyes were wide, his lips pressed together in a thin line of panic. But before Charles could react, a shadow loomed over them. An older man, tall and imposing, with slicked back hair and a scowl that could melt ice. "Enough," he barked, stepping in front of the loud man. "This isn't how we handle things." Charles recognized him immediately. This was Marcus Worthington, an influential figure in their social circle, someone who held a fair amount of sway in the city. Marcus had helped Charles on several business ventures, his association a badge of honor. Had he come to defend Charles, or was it something more ominous? But as he looked closer, he saw something in Marcus's eyes, a flicker of something twisted, a knowing look that sent a chill racing through him. As if this was a game to him, one he was orchestrating. "Lily," Marcus said, his tone slow and deliberate, "you've always been too impulsive." There was a weight to his words. "You think you're protecting them? You're only dragging them further into the storm." Her face hardened. "What do you mean?" "What did you do the day Ethan fell at the park?" Marcus pressed, his voice like steel. "Do you think you can just bury that? You can't hide from the truth." The cafe buzzed with whispers. People shifted in their seats, straining to catch every word. Charles felt a prickle along his spine. The implications were thick in the air, murky with secrets. "Lily." Charles's heart raced as he took another step closer to her, wanting to hear her explanation, yet terrified of what it might be. What truth? For a moment she hesitated, just for a heartbeat. Then she met Charles's gaze, and he could see something flicker, something break inside her. And at that moment, the front door swung open, with a crash. A cold gust whipped through the cafe, and in walked a figure draped in a long black coat, face obscured by the collar. Beams of sunlight caught the edges of the coat, creating an almost shadowy aura around them. Heads turned. Murmurs turned into gasps. Chaos thrummed in the air. "Sorry I'm late," the figure called, voice low but clear, sending a ripple of unease through the crowd. "Didn't want to miss the family reunion." A gasp escaped Lily. "No, not you." Charles felt all the color drain from his face. Everything spiraled. Who was this person? What had Lily brought into their lives? And how could everything shift so quickly, leaving him gasping for clarity in a whirlpool of confusion? "Lily, what's going on?" he demanded, voice strained. The cafe felt like it was tilting, like they were about to plunge into a dark cavern of secrets he never knew existed. The stranger stepped further into the light, revealing a face Charles had never expected to see. A face that held the truth of everything, gathering together pieces of his life he thought were separate. Surprised Charles. The past really has a way of catching up, doesn't it? In that instant, Charles' world tilted, spinning out of control, and he knew nothing would ever be the same. The figure stepped into the light, revealing a face that twisted Charles's stomach into knots. It was Alex, an old friend he hadn't seen in years. But it wasn't just that. They had shared secrets, betrayals that clawed at his heart. "Alex," Charles breathed, a lump forming in his throat. The cafe buzzed with stunned murmurs, a wave of confusion crashing over the patrons. Lily's face froze, a mix of shock and fear flickering across her features. "What are you doing here?" she managed, her voice barely a whisper.
"I came to see my sister,"
Alex said, his voice smooth, but edged with something darker. "And it seems I've arrived just in time for a family reunion." The weight of his words landed like a punch, sending a ripple of tension through the room. Was he really her brother? Charles felt the ground shift beneath him. "You're not her brother, he started. But Lily was shaking her head, urgency flooding her eyes. "Charles, wait. It's complicated," she stammered, her breath hitching in her throat, as Ethan crouched closer to her side, eyes wide with fear. "Complicated?" The word hung in the air, heavy with dread. "You're saying this is your brother?" Charles could hardly breathe as he searched her face for the truth, any shred of it. "Yes, but Alex isn't here for the reason you think." "Isn't he?" Alex cut in, stepping closer, the crowd inching back as if sensing the danger. "Let's be real. I've always had a way of getting what I want." The murmurs turned into anxious whispers. People fidgeted in their seats, glancing between the trio. Fear, shock, and curiosity knitting their faces tight. "What do you want?" Charles managed, his voice shaking. "For starters, I want the truth about your little family secret," Alex said, pointing at Ethan. "The truth is, I know things that could tear your life apart." Charles felt the air grow thick, like a looming storm cloud. His heart pounded. The fear clawed at him. "You need to leave," he demanded, adrenaline flooding through him. "Oh, but I can't do that, can I?" Alex's smile was predatory, a jagged edge. "Not when we're on the brink of something so much bigger. You have no idea who you're dealing with." Ethan crouched even lower, trembling. This was more than just a confrontation. It was a blockbuster twist that would change everything. "Lily, please," he whispered, fear shimmering in his eyes. But before she could respond, Alex motioned dramatically, and chaos erupted. "You want to know what I really want?" He leaned forward, lowering his voice to a whisper, but loud enough to ripple through the cafe. "I want to reclaim what was wrongfully taken from me." "What does that mean?" Charles' voice was sharp, the urgency rising in his chest. "It means," Alex paused for effect, his eyes glinting with manic energy. "I want Ethan." Time slowed. A cold wave coursed through Charles' veins. How could he mean that? "You're out of your mind," he shouted, fists clenching. "Am I?" Alex stepped back, the room capturing every ounce of tension. Everyone leaned in, breaths held tight. "You don't know the story, Charles. You don't know who you're keeping from me." From the back of the cafe, Marcus's voice rose above the rest, sharp as glass. "You're playing a dangerous game, Alex. You don't want to unleash what's been buried." At that moment, silence fell like a heavy blanket. Everyone was glued to the scene, breaths trembling in anticipation. Charles's thoughts raced. What had he missed? What truth would unravel everything he thought secure? "Take one last look at your perfect little family," Alex hissed, his gaze darting between Charles and Ethan, finally landing back on Lily. "Because everything changes from here on out." Lily stood frozen in a storm of emotions, struggling to contain what could sink them all. The air was thick with unsaid words, and Charles could feel it. The past was clawing back, and they were all caught in its web. What had they buried? And could they ever emerge from the shadows of this dark family truth? Charles felt the weight of everything collapsing around him. The sheer shock of Alex's appearance sent adrenaline racing through his veins. The murmurs in the cafe swirled like a storm, hot breaths catching in throats. Lily's face had turned pale, her eyes wide with disbelief, as Ethan clutched at her shirt, trembling. "You," Charles' voice faltered, disbelief twisting his stomach. "You've got to be kidding. Why are you here?" Alex's expression shifted, that disturbing smile growing wider. "Because the truth can't stay buried, can it?" His voice dripped with mockery, each word laced with venom. "And I have a score to settle." Lily stepped closer to Ethan, trying to shield him from the tension. This isn't the time, Alex. You can't just act like this. Oh, but I can. He grinned, taking an exaggerated step forward. Guess what? I've only just begun. Suddenly, everything shifted. A commotion erupted near the cafe entrance. A group of men, all wearing dark suits and grim expressions, burst in. There he is, the traitor, one shouted, pointing directly at Alex. The crowd backed away, eyes wide with confusion. Charles blinked, his heart pounding. Who were these men? Why did they look so furious? Traitor? What's this about? Alex said, his demeanor changing instantly, uncertainty flashing across his face. He stepped back, hands raised defensively. This ends now, one of the men barked, moving forward. You have no idea what kind of trouble you're in. Trouble? Alex's bravado seemed to slip for a second, revealing a crack in his mask. You don't know who you're dealing with, but the man wasn't intimidated. He lunged at Alex, grabbing him by the collar. The cafe erupted in chaos, people shouting, some trying to flee, while others just stood frozen, caught in the whirlwind of fear. Lily turned to Charles, panic in her eyes. We need to get out of here, Ethan. No, Charles shouted, tightening his grip on his son. We stand our ground. But it was too late. The men dragged Alex away, one of them shouting, You can't hide. The truth will come out. In the flurry of noise, a sharp gasp sliced through the clamor. Wait! Lily's voice rose above the chaos, filled with an urgent clarity that froze everyone in place. Alex, you didn't tell them. What are you talking about? Charles's heartbeat raced. What is going on? It's about the baby, Lily said, her voice trembling but clear. The baby who was taken. The room fell silent. Every eye turned toward Lily, mouths slightly agape. What baby? One of the men scoffed, his demeanor shifting. From aggression to curious disbelief. Charles felt a chill creep through him. A baby? Lily, what are you saying? The baby my parents lost, she continued, voice rising. The baby that should have been with us. Her hands shook as she pointed to Alex. You know the truth, Alex. Alex's face paled, and the air changed. The threat of violence hung in the air as confusion stitched itself into a tapestry of horror. No, don't, he shouted, eyes darting around in panic. But the man holding him tightened his grip, glancing at his companions, uncertainty swaying in the air. What do you mean? Lost? They took my brother, Lily cried, her voice cracking with emotion. They said he was dead, but, suddenly, a loud bang echoed through the cafe, causing everyone to jump. A figure, hooded and large, had barged through the entrance, clutching something in their hand. This ends now, the figure bellowed, voice deep and rumbling. Charles instinctively shielded Ethan, adrenaline surging. Get back, he yelled as gasps rippled through the crowd. The attention mosaic of the cafe shifted, an unpredictable tide of emotion. The truth, buried deep, began to unearth itself. Who was this figure? What were they really after? What was the connection to the baby? And as the pieces danced dangerously close to one another, all Charles could think was whether they'd survive this chaos, or if the secrets would imprison them all forever. The figure in the long black coat took a slow step forward, the cafe's buzzing silence clinging to the air. Their hood obscured everything but a shadow of a face. A whisper of mystery crackled as if electricity shot through the room. Charles felt his heart clench, time grinding to a halt. What do you want? Someone breathed from the back. Murmurs swirled like leaves in a storm, an anxious tension knotting all around. The shadowy figure pulled down the hood, and gasps erupted like fireworks. It was a face Charles recognized too well, a face loaded with memories that cut deeper than any knife. Margaret, he whispered, disbelief flooding his voice. Margaret was his estranged sister, the very sibling he hadn't seen in over a decade. The air grew thick. It felt as if the cafe walls were closing in, suffocating him under the weight of the past. Her presence ignited old wounds, tearing at the already raw edges of his reality. What are you doing here? He stammered, a lump forming in his throat. The shocked gazes of his companions felt like daggers, each whispered conversation burning hot against his skin. Because I had to make sure, her voice trembled but held a certain iron. You don't understand, Charles. If I don't stop this, everything will fall apart. Stop what? Lily's voice broke through, a strange blend of fear and urgency. Margaret looked toward her with an intensity that felt electric. The baby, Lily, the one you thought was lost. The truth isn't what you think it is. What do you mean? Lily shook her head, confusion blurring her features. What do you know? Margaret straightened, stepping into the warmth of the cafe light, revealing tired eyes but a fierce determination. I know what happened that day. The day your parents... She hesitated, emotions crossing her face. They didn't just lose a baby, they made a choice. And that choice... Her voice thickened, sadness almost weighty. It changed everything. The room buzzed back to life. Swirling with new intensity, Charles felt dizzy. What do you mean, made a choice? What are you saying? Desperation and confusion bled into his words. Ethan isn't just your son, Margaret declared, her voice steadying as fear ebbed and flowed. He's our son. Silence exploded. Faces twisted in shock. Whispers morphed into loud gasps that echoed around. Charles's world teetered on the brink of collapse as multiple realities hungrily tugged at his understanding. What? No, that can't be. But Margaret's eyes burned with truth. It's the only thing that makes sense. Your family didn't just mourn their son, they sold him. They adopted him out while keeping the truth buried. They thought they could erase their mistakes. Ethan's small hand gripped Lily's tightly, trembling but powerful, a silent plea for reassurance. Mom, he whispered to Lily, wide eyes swirling with innocence and confusion. Eyes scanned the room, filled with sympathy for the unfolding drama, yet reflecting burnt craving to understand more, as if reality peered through shadows, tipping into madness. Shut up, Alex, shouted above the tumult. This has nothing to do with you. His outburst echoed painfully, desperation oozing from his tone. Doesn't it? Margaret shot back, eyes darting to him. You abandoned your family to protect yourself. You made a choice too. Charles's head spun. His stomach churned, a weight settled like a stone in his chest. The truth they had all danced around snapped into focus. Every hidden detail felt like shards from a shattered past, piercing into the present. Why now? He demanded, his voice strained. Why show up after all these years? Because I'm here to stop it before it all implodes, Margaret said firmly, her gaze darting toward the men still looming dangerously close. Before they take you and Ethan again. What? Charles whispered, barely audible. The tension thickened again, brewing a storm as the cafe buzzed, the air so tense it could spark. Who's trying to take us? Before she could respond, another figure burst through the door, this one more imposing, presence staggering. A tall man with a scar running down his cheek. Enough of this nonsense, he snarled. We're not leaving without him. All eyes swung toward him, adrenaline surging anew as the stakes climbed higher, every moment teetering on the edge. Who are you? Lily shouted. But the man just smirked, his eyes glinting as if relishing the chaos. And then he pointed directly at Ethan. He's coming with us. Time stopped. The enormity of the claim hung like an apparition, thrusting a whisper of dread into every heart. Everything transformed in an instant. The truth became enshrouded in layers deeper than they ever could have imagined. Get away from him, Charles shouted, stepping in front of Ethan, heart pounding, breaths quick and sharp. But every instinct warned him, this far from over. The questions blared now louder than the confusion of a moment ago. Who had truly been taken? Who held the power? What was real, and what had always been a lie? And as the shadows danced menacingly, one undeniable truth clamped down on him. Something was about to break, and he could feel it reverberating through the very ground beneath them. Charles felt his heart race as Alex's words hung in the air, thick with a tension that felt almost tangible. The man's demands echoed like a siren's call, calling forth some deep-seated fear from the shadows. There was a moment of madness where everything felt suspended, waiting for the next move, the next breath. But then, like the crack of thunder, chaos erupted. "I'm not going anywhere," Ethan cried, pulling away from Charles, eyes darting around as comprehension flickered across his face. That scream jolted everyone, and then, at that very moment, something unexpected happened. The door swung open again. In strode an officer in uniform, his brow furrowed and eyes full of determination. "What's going on here?" His voice resonated, cutting through the tension like a hot knife through butter. The sight of law enforcement sent shockwaves through the cafe. Whispers shifted to nervous glances, and suddenly the fear shifted focus. Charles felt a rush of relief, then confusion. Should he trust this officer? "I need every one of you to stay calm," the officer declared, stepping further inside. "There's been a report." "A report?" Alex smirked, scoffing as he held up his hands defensively. "Yeah, right? Is this supposed to scare me?" But then, the officer's gaze fell on Charles, eyebrows rising in recognition. "Mr. Whitmore," he said, voice suddenly solemn, "we need to talk." Charles's stomach dropped, dread curling around his insides. "What about?" His voice trembled. "We just received a call." The officer hesitated, and in that pause, the weight of the moment shifted again. "From your wife. She believes you're in danger." The cafe gasped, a wave of shock rippling through the air. Lily paled, her eyes darting to Charles, and the gravity of the situation crushed down. "My wife? But how does she know?" "No, what danger?" The officer took a step closer, his voice low, desperate to maintain control amidst the chaos. "She's worried someone has been following you, that you're being targeted." "Targeted?" Charles echoed, confusion racing through his mind. "How? Why?" Just then, Margaret spoke, her voice a low murmur, barely above the panic whirling around them. "It's not just about Ethan. It's about your entire family, Charles. Your past, what they want from you." "I don't understand," Charles shouted, the hopelessness flooding through him. But just then, the cafe's glass door burst open once more, and a large man charged inside, his coat flaring like a flag in the wind. The entire cafe turned, hearts pounding. "I've got it," he shouted. "Get ready." In his hand was a device, something glinting and metallic. Panic erupted, with people yelling, chairs scraping against the floor. "What are you doing?" the officer barked, lunging forward. But before any of them could react, the man activated the device. A blinding flash filled the room. Charles blinked, everything blurring as he felt himself being hurled backward into a moment of darkness. His mind reeled, spinning into chaos. When the light faded, he staggered to his feet, disoriented. The cafe was empty now, stripped of its noise, leaving just the stillness of a shell. Where was everybody? Where was Ethan? Where was Lily? He gasped, searching for signs of life, but it was just him, the whispers of memories gnawing at him. And then he saw it. A note lay on a table, the only sign that he was not completely alone. Slowly he approached, his heart pounding in his chest. The familiar handwriting blazed like a beacon. It was addressed directly to him. "You need to know the truth, Charles. About everything. I'll explain everything, but you must find me. The clock is ticking." Desperation clawed at his throat. Who had taken his family? What was the truth? He felt the ground beneath him tremble, not just from fear, but from ominous certainty. The pieces were scattered, but the stakes had risen beyond what he could control. He crumpled the note in his fist, a determined fire igniting inside him. He wouldn't stop until he found them. He wouldn't rest until the veil of darkness was pulled back. What new horrors awaited him? What secrets were still to be uncovered? And as the silence of the cafe enveloped him, a chilling truth dawned. Perhaps this wasn't just about family or love. It was about survival. Charles's heart thudded in his chest, the unfamiliar silence of the cafe pressing down on him like a heavy weight. He could feel his pulse racing as he scanned the empty tables and chairs. The note crumpled in his fist felt like a lifeline. In the void, he needed answers. He needed to find Ethan and Lily, to assemble the shattered pieces of this absurd, tangled family drama. With a deep breath, he forced himself to think clearly. Where would they go? The park? The old bookstore they loved? The urgency swirled within him, pulling him through the door and into the bright afternoon light of the street outside. His senses heightened. He sprinted down the sidewalk, a knot twisted in his stomach. Every second felt like eternity. Just ahead, the park spread out beneath a canopy of trees, familiar and welcoming. He spotted a figure seated on a bench, heart racing. It was Lily. "Lily!" he called, relief flooding through him. But as he rushed closer, dread clamped down again. Something was wrong. Her eyes flicked up, but there was an emptiness to her gaze that sent a shiver racing through him. She stood abruptly, a hand waving him away. "Charles, no!" But his feet moved faster than his brain. "What's wrong? Where's Ethan?" And then he saw him, a movement in the bushes nearby. Ethan was crouched there, eyes wide, frozen in place. A chill ran through Charles as he approached. "I thought I'd lost you." But just as he reached for his son, there was a loud snap behind him. "Don't take another step." A voice snarled, cold and dangerous. A man stepped forward, eyes black as coal, a gun glinting in his hand. Shock coursed through Charles. It pierced him like ice. "What do you want?" he shouted, adrenaline surging. This couldn't be happening. "I want the boy," the man barked, pointing the gun straight at Ethan, whose small frame trembled behind the foliage. "Give him to me and no one gets hurt." "Get away from him!" Charles shouted, panic bubbling within him, a dark, gnawing fear rising into a savage, protective anger. "He's my son." "None of that matters." The man's lips twisted into a cruel grin. "He's the key to everything." "What do you mean?" Charles felt his heart racing like a wild bird trying to escape its cage. "You don't know anything about him." But the man just sharpened his gaze, settling that glint of power squarely on Charles. "Oh, I know exactly what he is. He's the reason this family's secrets are going to unravel completely." "Secrets?" The word slipped from Charles' lips like a whisper of dread. "What secrets?" The man stepped back, eyes flicking to Lily before returning to Charles. "You really don't know, do you?" And as his words sank in, reality began to fold in on itself. Somewhere in his gut, he felt the dawn of a horrifying truth. "What are you talking about?" Before he could process the implications, the man lifted his hand, fingers poised to pull the trigger. Man turned, eyes wide as he shifted his focus, panic snapping through him. The sound of the gun dropping to the ground echoed like a thunderclap. In that split second, as the world whirled in slow motion, Charles turned to grab Ethan, pulling him into his arms. "I've got you, buddy. You're safe." But then, a familiar voice pierced through the clamor. "Charles, don't you see? None of this is what it seems." He turned, eyes widening as Margaret stepped forward, her face etched with urgency. "That man isn't the threat, it's you." Confusion wrapped around him like fog. "What? What are you talking about?" "I'm sorry, Charles," she shouted, desperation lacing her voice. "But this is your doing. You were never supposed to find out about Ethan." Charles froze, the weight of her words crashing down around him. Everything twisted inside. "What do you mean?" Margaret took a step back, shaking her head, horror written across her features. "I thought you were different. I thought the baby wasn't just taken, it was hidden, and you were part of it." The air thickened, suffocating in its weight. "What?" he whispered, but it felt like a scream. "What are you saying?" But before the truth could emerge, the scene exploded. Officers wrestled the man to the ground. Screams, shouts, and chaos surged around them. Charles grappled with the torrent of emotion while holding Ethan close, fear curling at the edges. And in that electric moment, with the weight of secrets hanging precariously, Charles felt the truth break below the surface. That everything he'd known might be a lie. Who was he really? Who was Ethan? And what more horrifying secrets remained hidden in the shadows? As the chaos whirled around, the silence of deeper truth beckoned. What had Margaret really meant? And why did it feel like the very ground beneath him was ready to collapse? Charles felt the heat of the moment coursing through him, every heartbeat like a drum signaling chaos. Officers surged around, voices shouting orders, but all he could hear was the thundering of his own heart. Ethan was right there, clinging to Lily, their breaths rapid and fearful. An urgent need to protect surged within him. But then Margaret's words echoed, turning his gut into a twisted knot. You were part of it. Before he could process anything further, the figure of the man who had threatened them spoke again, his voice steadying amidst the chaos. You don't even know what danger really is. His eyes glinted with a dark satisfaction. You've all been dancing in the dark, and the truth is about to shine a spotlight on everything. Time slowed, murmurs bubbling around them, crowding close as fear streaked across the faces of those in the park. The officers edged toward the man, tense and ready, yet unsure of how deeply the danger ran. Then, without warning, Margaret stepped closer to Charles, fear radiating from her. They can't. No, she said, her voice a whisper but tinged with panic. We can't let them know about us. What do you mean about us? He asked, confusion clawing at him. But just as he felt the fog of questions begin to clear, the world splintered apart. Suddenly, there was a loud crack. A gunshot rang out, echoing against the trees, slicing through the air with savage clarity. Panic erupted as the crowd scattered, shouts amplified like wildfire. Charles felt himself pushed to the ground, instinctively, the weight of Ethan shielding him. Stay down, he shouted, voice strained, covering his son's small body with his own. Fear wrapped around him tightly, constricting all reason. But his eyes darted to Margaret. She remained standing, mouth agape, eyes locked on the figure who had raised the firearm, the man's expression shifting from threat to something else entirely, a dawning realization. She shouted, "No, don't do it." And then, in a heartbeat, something shifted in the air. That figure wasn't backing down. Instead, he took a step back, eyes wide with renewed fear. Horror stitched across his face. "Wait, you're not supposed to be here." Silence smashed through the initial panic. All eyes shifted from the gunman to Margaret, who now looked like a ghost, a plea for salvation etched into every line of her face. "Margaret, just get down," Charles cried, voice hoarse, fear clawing up his throat. "No," she exclaimed, desperation spilling from her. "He needs to see. Charles, the truth is more complicated than you think." Before he could respond, she lifted her hands, and there was an instant shift. "I'm not your enemy, Ethan," she shouted, voice fierce like steel. The demeanor of the gunman seemed to crack, confusion swirling in his eyes. "You shouldn't have come," he yelled. "Enough!" There came a voice from the shadows behind Margaret. Another figure emerged, a woman, hardened, but somehow familiar, stepping into the light. It was Sarah, the woman who had been like a sister to Margaret. A sly smile flickered across her lips. "I knew you'd find your way back, Margaret," Sarah said, voice sultry, yet dangerous. "But your little secret's out now." "What do you mean?" Charles gasped, dread gripping him. "What secret?" As if the world had twisted one more time, Sarah's expression softened, revealing a glimpse of vulnerability. "The truth, Charles. The baby you thought was lost?" Time froze. Everything spiraled into a maelstrom of uncertainty. Margaret's eyes brimmed with unshed tears. Then it happened. A shuddering scream echoed, "Ethan. No! You said he was safe. You promised." Every gaze shifted again, plunging into his innocent face. The sheer weight of that scream shattered the tension. Piercing through the narrative like a jagged shard of glass, the air hung thick with unanswered questions, the past swirling around them like a tempest ready to swallow them whole. "Ethan," Charles whispered, reaching for his son, but fear bounded with uncertainty. "Mom?" Ethan's small voice trembled, confusion swirling in those innocent eyes, vulnerable, yet so tightly intertwined with the chaos. "Charles, we need to fight now," Margaret beseeched, her voice shaking with urgency. But the truth hung in the air, painful and elusive. "What's the truth, Margaret? You can't throw words around like grenades and expect to walk away." "But Charles," she began, and tears finally slipped down her cheeks. "The baby isn't just some past. It's Ethan. He's part of all this." A thunderclap shook the ground, and the world tilted precariously, leaving Charles gasping. The sense of safety ripped away. "How can you say that?" Charles's voice broke as he pulled Ethan closer. The revelation loomed heavy, secrets colliding with his reality, and then he understood. This wasn't just about family or love. It was about a hidden world of lies, one that might devour them all. In that instant, surrounded by chaos and fear of what was to come, everything shifted completely. Would this fracture them, or bind them together for the fight? Through the unfolding panic, one question haunted him, echoing louder than all else. Who truly was Ethan, and what kind of storm was lurking just beyond the horizon? Amid the chaos, time seemed suspended, words hanging heavy in the air, like a storm waiting to break. Charles felt the weight of everything crashing down around him. Ethan stood close, terrified, while Margaret's imploring gaze pierced through fray. "Enough!" shouted the gunman, his voice slicing through the tension. But as the cacophony of sirens thundered closer, the man was clearly losing control. "Get down!" an officer roared, rushing forward. Charles instinctively pulled Ethan into his arms, shielding him from the chaos, holding onto his son for dear life. In that fleeting moment, he caught a glimpse of panic in Lily's eyes as she crouched low, fear ricocheting all around. "Charles, listen to me," Margaret yelled, desperation turning her voice raw. "The truth isn't just about family. It's survival. If this," she gestured toward the gunman, "goes wrong, everything we love will be taken away." Suddenly, the officer lunged, forcing the man to the ground. The sound was thunderous, a muted chaos that echoed throughout the park. As they wrestled him to the ground, cold breeze slithered through, wrapping around Charles like a shroud, highlighting the danger that still loomed. "Lily," he cried out, panic rising like bile, "we have to move." "Yes." She grabbed Ethan's hand, pulling him close. "This way." As a surge of officers flooded the area, Margaret stood rooted, hesitant. "I can help. We can." "No," Charles shouted back, feeling the darkness creep closer. "We don't have time. We need to be together. That's our only chance." But inside Margaret's eyes, he recognized an unyielding determination. "I'll make sure you're safe," she promised, and in that fleeting moment, he could see the bond they once shared, a flickering light. "Go now." The officer's shouts broke through the tension once more as more officers swarmed, ropes of safety weaving a fragile net around them. In a rushed burst, they took off, weaving through the brush. The sound of sirens faded, swallowed by the pounding of blood in his ears. Charles' heart raced as they navigated toward the exit of the park, the weight of secrets still heavy in the air. As they crossed the threshold, a sense of fresh air rushed to meet them, a bittersweet victory. They stumbled out onto the street, where chaos erupted into confusion for the onlookers, their faces showing shock, curiosity, and compassion. Charles turned, running back toward Margaret, who stood within reach of the turmoil, eyes glistening. "Margaret!" he shouted, breathless. "Charles," she replied, voice thick with emotion, "I'll always protect you." There. Gazes held for what felt like an eternity. He wanted to scream, to gnash his teeth, so many questions swirled. But there was no more time. "Trust me," she shouted, "I'll find the truth." "Wait," Charles cried, but another officer pushed him forward, urging him away from the chaos, away from her. With one last look, he turned back to Ethan and Lily, relief washing over him like a cleansing rain. They were safe for now. As they stepped away, the thrum of the crowd faded into the distance. Charles faced his family, determination sparking anew. They might be shrouded in secrets, but they had the strength to confront whatever waited ahead. Pain lingered, but clarity dawned.
All the bonds of love, whether tangled
In loss or woven with hope, were worth fighting for. And together, they would unravel the truth. As they walked away, each step echoed with the promise of a new beginning. A new dawn awaited, filled with the ability to reclaim their lives and shape their futures. You have to subscribe right now. Don't miss the next exclusive stories that are coming your way. Smash that like button right now to feed the algorithm and keep us going. Flood the comment section with your thoughts and theories about this jaw-dropping ending. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see how this ends. Your support means the world. Let's keep this community thriving.